think I can do, since I figured out a way. Hi, the video just started. I don't know. I was talking during the middle of starting the video, but anyways. Frost, I can probably do just like Dickinson a little bit, where we kind of were able to figure out for the most part how to get it all done in one day in the other class because we had a small class. So I think I may be able to do that today with Frost as well. Like we can kind of just plow through it, mow through it. There's one called. So funny. Nichols is hilarious. But you did the video. Did anybody actually stick around and see the video?
Yeah. Well, I saw it on the blackboard.
On the blackboard, the week 11, the day one. I have it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that video had the fun intro, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
There was scouring music at the end.
And you were talking to Audrey, and Audrey was just kicking.
And she's just
She
chilling.
was just laughing.
She likes. Did she like being referenced in the video? She's like,
Yeah.
my gosh, he's talking to me directly. So yeah, I thought I already had a window open with all of Frost's poems. Did I not? Let me see. I did at some point. Let's see. Frost window setting saved. I guess not. I thought I already had a window. I did it last week. Anyways, but we got. Oh, I've already got the links too for some of these. Did you actually? If people already, who in the room has not actually seen the discussion of road not taken and mowing yet?
I don't think I've seen the discussion.
Because I had the video that I included, the one that was online. It was me talking about road not taken and mowing. That was all I got through on that video, and I was going to do the rest in class. So I can still do road not taken pretty quick, and I can do mowing pretty quick. I wanted to do the discussion post for you guys on Sunday, so I could grade all the Frost discussions so that I would know kind of your thoughts on it. I didn't have a chance to do that because the plannings were taking so long in 1301. I don't know what it was about this particular group, but I was having so much trouble getting these plannings done because there's always something a little off with everybody, so I wasn't able to do a whole lot of, this is great, this works, start your paper, this is great, that's usually what makes it go fast, is a lot of people have just done what they're supposed to do and I can move on. But there wasn't a whole lot of that. And then people were returning it in, and I was like, well, it's already right here. And so I was making sure that with the annotated bibliography, I don't know if y'all remember 1301 who had me, they don't know if they can even read their articles yet until I've approved them. So I had to get theirs done, and now I'm going to work on yours. I'd already kind of gone over this with Joseph earlier, but I'm going to re-mention all this. Like, my plan for this week is, in terms of grading, is to do your planning assignments starting this evening, continuing them tomorrow, and getting those done. So y'all know if you can move on to the research paper and stuff. Because I think some people will try to do it over the course of this weekend. Most people will try to write that paper next Thursday. Another bunch of people will go, I'll start trying to on Thursday, realize it's bigger than I thought it was, then I'll continue over the course of next weekend, which is after when it's due, but doesn't still. I know some people will but it'd be nice to have that planning as soon as possible.
I was like, is it due next Thursday though?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I'm going to try to get that to you pretty quick, but some people just plan on turning things in late, which is interesting, but it's still doable. So tonight and tomorrow morning, and also probably tomorrow evening, grading 1302 plannings. Additionally, tomorrow morning I will be reopening quizzes for people. So if you need quizzes reopened, email me which ones those are. I'll be doing that en masse, meaning a lot of people at once. Whoever's turned those in. What?
Not during church.
Not during church? What does that mean?
Mass.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. And see, that was one of the reasons, I'm trying to get better at, when I use a word I'm not sure if people are familiar with, trying to, clarify, because that's the kind of thing that happens, is I'm in my head thinking EN space MASSE, en masse, meaning a lot of people at once, whereas you're hearing IN, capital M, Catholic Mass, No, I mean, it's some people in the room might have actually, that's where their brain went. And they were like, so in church, and you just kind of clarified that point for that person was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where I was. But I'm trying to get better because I used one word, I think in 1301 the other week, where it became so obvious I'd done it. I used the word ubiquitous, and they just went, it's like I broke everybody's brain at once. And I just went, oh, it just means everybody's got it. I said, when I say phones are ubiquitous, it means just almost nobody doesn't have a phone now. It's like it went from almost nobody having them like 30 years ago to now they're ubiquitous. And they're like, oh, yeah. But I'm trying to get better at that. So I'll be opening a whole lot of quizzes at once tomorrow for people who've emailed me. I'll have like a whole folder ready with lots of people who've sent me emails, and I'll just open them one at a time. And I'll copy paste the same message to everybody when I reply and say, hey, this quiz is open. And I'll just say, whatever quizzes you requested are now opened. Please go do. It'll be open until Sunday.
You will be able to get full credit for it?
What'd you say?
Will you be able to get full credit for the quizzes?
I mean, I guess so, because I'm not going to go back and change the grades. It's the discussion post you'll only get half credit for if you never email me about missing it prior. So like later on when we do discussion posts, when I reopen them in week, I think it's 13, I'll reopen all the discussion posts. You can get half credit for the ones you missed. But if you had emailed me originally that you'd missed it, said, hey, I missed the discussion post this weekend, like way back in the day, then I'll give you full credit.
So I can still email you.
Depending on the week, yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like I don't have it in my policies for the class because it's like one of those things I kind of just bring up later. It's not an official thing I ever know I'm going to do. Is sometimes I'll go, yeah, I feel like doing that. And then that the annotated bibliographies are more important for the students in 1301 to know if their articles, they're understanding them correctly, if they work, if they're thinking about them right. So I need to grade those before I grade your poetry evaluation synthesis, because that, I mean, nobody's going to understand how to do their research paper better by what your grade is on your evaluation synthesis. It's just not going to be the case. So y'all's will be, so essentially my order is plannings for 1302 and Britlet. Then I'm going to go back and regrade plannings for 1301. Then I'm going to do annotated bibliographies. Then I'm going to do evaluation synthesis 3. If research papers haven't started rolling in beforehand, because I'll usually do research papers first because they're worth the most. People care the most about what that grade is. But with the Friday, what I'm doing tomorrow when I come to work, it's going to be editing the couple of videos I've got for today. Like your video is going to be the one that I use for this week because
You don't have a class on Friday, right?
no classes on
You're
Friday.
campus.
Right, I'm on campus.
So if we had a question or something, we could come find you on Friday.
Yeah, and I'll always be in this room because
Okay,
if I'm down there, people talk to me and I get nothing done. If I'm down here, I just sit at that table right there and I just type away on the computer. So if you needed a question, you can come ask me in this room. Now I'll probably have the door closed and locked, but just knock, and I'll come to the door. It's possible I won't be in the room, but very unlikely that on a Friday I would not be in this room if the light is on and the door is closed. Because the door is closed and locked, there's no reason for the door to be closed and locked unless I'm in it, or I've been in it recently. So Friday I plan on editing the videos real quick and doing the reopenings of the quizzes and answering emails if I can get them all done, because I couldn't answer emails at the conference. We were busy all the time, except for when we went and saw Joker. But I was going to do some stuff at work at that night. I was just like, oh, I'll just go back to the room and we'll work. But they went, we're going to see a movie. And I was like, of course we are. They're the kind of people, they're like between, like where they're in the car, like they can grade in the car. And I'm just like, I can't grade in a car. Like I'm just not built that way. Like I got to have quiet and nothing around me and it's set time and then I can grade. But I cannot answer emails, or I can't just, I'll fit an email here or there. I'm not that kind of person. I got to have a consistent train of thought to get anything done. Which is why I love my Fridays. It's just like I'm right in front of the computer getting stuff done. And so that's going to be Friday is opening quizzes, emails, and then editing videos. And then on Saturday and Sunday I'll be grading. So that's kind of the plan for this weekend. Plan for today is Frost. And talking about Frost and what Frost entails. So I'm going to turn the projector on. There it is.
Is that why you don't like grading at home? Because you get distracted too?
I actually prefer grading at home now. The problem is what I prefer is when I have an office. I love my daughter. I'm not saying I would rather have my office back than my daughter, because she's taken over what was my office and has turned it into a kid's room. But it's very hard for me to get grading done when she runs around like, Daddy, and I'm like, hey, and that costs me 10 to 15 minutes on an essay because it takes me out.
Drops in the garage.
But I get less done here, oddly, because I'm not in a comfortable situation that I can zone in. This is more of a get clerical work done. I'm much better at getting like emails and videos edited here, because I can't edit videos at home because I can't put headphones in that will play noise that will drown out my family, because in video editing you have to be able to hear what the video is, and then you get distracted by your family making noise because you hear them in the silences between my words, like right now. And I would be like, what are they talking about? What are they watching? Because I can hear it. But yeah, it's really hard to grade at home, but it's even harder here, and it's easier to get the other stuff done here. If I don't bifurcate it that way, it just doesn't work. I guess I will have a window open over there. I just said new tab. Well, I guess that's new tab's not a problem. Let's just do that. No, that's not what we want to do at all. We're not going to do that at all. New tab, new tab, new tab. Oh, good. It just literally goes to it if you do it that way. So then we're going to have another tab we do. I want those over there, though. Still plan on talking about the chimney sweeper someday. Tiger. Let's see. And then we have, this is going to be road not taken. There's literally an ad for it. That's so weird. And then we've got, what, stopping by woods is one of them. And then we've got, the last one would be mending wall. There's a lot of paper topics in Frost's stuff, in case people are still looking. Because I think there's so many possibilities. I think stopping by woods is next, then mending wall. Am I right? Am I right on the order there, I think? Road, mowing, stopping, mending after birches. Road, mowing, stopping, mending after birches. Yes. And I'll do like a brief once over of road not taken. I'm going to kill these little things though first. So I really hate these things. Was Frost old enough where his stuff is out of copyright? That's very interesting. What was your, I'm assuming your favorite poem of Frost was Road Not Taken? Usually people say that. Mending Wall? What'd you like about Mending Wall?
I guess I understood it better than Road Not Taken.
Fair enough. That is interesting. I've noticed a lot of people too will have that. That's their feeling, is like whatever I understand the most is my favorite. It's because poetry, the thing that you're all afraid of in the first place, is the fact that they're not afraid of. It's like the thing that makes you uncomfortable about poetry is it's just not readily understood when you first look at it. And if you can find one that is, you're like, oh, thank heaven.
I have to Google words to figure out what it means.
I kind of get this one. I like this one best.
Yeah. We're actually going to start, so we'll start with the road not taken, and I'll tell you why most people have really no understanding of this poem. And I'll try to do all this real quick. I think some of you have seen this on the video already, but once you understand this about Frost, then I think the rest of the poems start to make a little more sense as you realize the images are a little more complicated than they may seem at first. So this one goes, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other. It was just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. No, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere, ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. And this is often quoted as a very inspirational poem, is it not? Like people will say, like, you know, I think people often equate the
Road less traveled.
took the road less traveled to almost like the way into heaven, right? Like there's that, I think, verse in the Bible or something. It's like, wide is the way and easy the path to hell, and very narrow is the path and long into heaven. So it's difficult to get to heaven, hard to get. So you think, okay, road less traveled, that's going to be the harder one. Easier to get to heaven. So this is a heaven thing. So the people will take it as an inspirational quote. I had one student one time had it tattooed on his arm right there. Like, 2 roads diverge into wood, I took the one less traveled by. It's made all the difference. I did not know that until after class, which maybe I should have known before, because basically I spent the whole rest of the few moments that I'm about to spend with you telling that the inspirational side of this poem, people seeing it as an inspiring thing, is completely and totally wrong. Like, that's not what this poem is about at all. This is a poem where there's a couple key words down here at the bottom in this last stanza that tell us that maybe that's a mistaken notion. One is the word sigh. One is the word difference. So when somebody sighs, it's genius that he included this word, because sigh could be or the expression of air out of our bodies can either be positive or negative. And same with the word difference. We see the word difference, and that's really made a difference for me, or man, that really made a difference for me. It could be a positive or a negative difference. The difference between 0 and 1 is 1. The difference between 0 and -1 is 1. So there's an equal difference between a positive and a negative from a neutral state. I'm sorry to get into math with you. Usually I would write that on the board, but it takes longer. And a lot of things, too, is that people will essentially, if you look at when they talk about this poem, ignore the first 3 stanzas like they don't exist. When they quote things, they just quote this bit. This little part right here. They don't quote anything else. But if you look, the whole poem, for the most part, is, and if you look at the title, too, what's the poem called? Do you remember the name of the poem? Road Not Taken. Road Not Taken. Is that right?
Yes.
A lot of times people remember it not as the road not taken, but they remember it as the road less traveled. It's often searched for on Google as the road less traveled by Robert Frost. And that's just not what it's called. It's called the road not taken. So the poem is really about the road not taken. That is what it's mostly about. And so he's saying essentially here, I saw these 2 roads that diverged, like it's a fork in the road. I look down one, I see lots of people have traveled down it. You can tell not many people have gone on this one. And he said he took the one that seemed kind of grassy. It wanted wear. Nobody had really traveled on it all that much. But he noticed that at the passing, like right where people first start to walk on the trail, lots of people had walked at the very beginning. But some people have gone down a few feet and went, and then they turn around and they go back the other way. So he said, I left the other trail, the one that everybody had gone down, for another day. I said, I'll do that someday, But then I doubted if I should ever come back. And so most of the time in this poem, he's talking about the decision itself between the roads and how a lot of people had started traveling on both roads equally, but changed their mind and gone back to the one that almost everybody had gone down, A lot of people have thought of this as a metaphor for, and that's one of the great things about Frost. They're almost always images, and you can make it a metaphor for just about anything you want that fits with it. Like, a lot of people have said, this is him talking about being a writer, being a poet, because, he became a writer and he went down this road. Almost nobody becomes a successful writer. A lot of people say, I'll try to write something, and they'll try to do it and realize I need to eat, and end up changing their mind. I can't afford to live as a writer, so I'm just going to get a job. And then he did it the whole way. He went the whole way. And you become an artist, you become well-known, you become famous, you become that kind of person. But you sort of are in this, little silo by yourself. When you become that, can you imagine, the famous, I've always wondered, people wonder, man, what happened to, Bella Thorne and Lindsay Lohan and, all those people who are, they're child stars, and then they just go crazy. Well, you live in a world that nobody else lives in. It's weird living. I've gone down this path. I have no idea what it's like going down the regular path. I'm in the woods alone, and nobody else has done this. And be like, man, what would it have been like if I just, mom and dad never took me to that agent, and I've, just got a family, and I go to school, and I went to the park as a kid, and didn't have to worry about there being paparazzi. And it's got to be a different life living the life that everybody else leads, and you might regret that. Now, that's one way of looking at this, is that people mistake what the reality of the poem is. There's a third level, though, is that essentially that idea I'm talking about now is the regret. Man, what if I had just gone down the road everybody else goes down? Would I have been happier? Would things have been better? I don't know. Frost wrote this poem to his friend, or for his friend, as a result of him talking about how man, I've got all these regrets about what I did in life. You know, it's like, what if I had just done this other thing? And Frost wrote this poem basically to make fun of his friend. Like, as a speaker, he has in this poem, it's not necessarily Frost, that's aching over this decision he's made. But Frost is like, the hell's your problem? You've made a decision. What's the point in thinking about what could have happened? It's a waste of time. It didn't happen. Deal with it. But we are humans and we regret a lot. You know, we go, man, what if I had just done this? But that's not what you did. It's what Frost is essentially saying. Is like, there's no point in thinking about it. It can't happen. You can't go back in time and fix it.
Right.
But we have all these fantasy movies, don't we? 13 going on 30. You know, like, you're not familiar with that one? Joseph's like, I don't know what you're talking about. The movies where somebody tomorrow, like Family Man, where like you wake up and apparently you're younger, or like you made a different life decision, or like your life is different, and it's always some magical, like you traveled back in time thing. Get to either relive your life, or like you get to see what life was like had you lived it the other way. We have like those essentially fantasy movies where like somebody magically wakes up one day and they get a chance to do everything all over. Or time travel movies like Back to the Future. They fulfill the human fantasy of going back and changing what is already set. And Frost is essentially saying it's pointless. We can't do that. Because he was, despite looking like he's this romantic poet and everything, he's a very practical guy. He was actually owned his own farm, and he really did this farming stuff, so that's why it looks like he really does care about it, because he actually did care about it. But yeah, it's often, so there's 3 levels really. There's a level of what Frost intended people to see when they read it, which was a positive poem, because he wanted people to see that positive outlook. He wanted people to look at it, and some people just misread it and see positively, oh, it's good to take the road less traveled. But he wanted the other people to look at it and see, no, it's really a poem about regret, if you look closely. But then his real true feelings about the matter is that regret is stupid. It's a zeros, like there's nothing you can accomplish by regretting. You can't change the past. Which I don't necessarily know that I agree with Frost on that. I think regret sometimes helps us make the right decisions in the future. You might go, man, I wish I could go back and redo that over. So instead, what you end up doing is changing your future.
It doesn't change the past.
Huh?
But it doesn't change the past.
It doesn't change the past, but having regrets can make you want to form a better future. If you have no regret, then maybe you still married the same type of woman again. Or you're like me and you go, maybe revise the situation this time. Maybe do something a little better. So, of course, you can see that particular feeling comes out of a little bit of a personal bias for me. But, as long as I know the bias, I'm not controlled by it. Now, mowing. I feel like this is maybe one of those that people would have, I don't know if a lot of people wrote about it, but I feel like some people would. Because you'd see the words mowing, you're like, I want to write about it. I usually have a lot more people doing writing. Yes? Yes. And how are you related to this woman? Okay. So do I need to report this as a robbery? Because it looks like you stole your car to me. No.
Wasn't he in 1301 last semester?
Maybe. Was he in 1301 last semester? Yeah. Because I know I've had him, but I actually didn't know until this semester that y'all were. But anyways, mowing. Y'all never took the same class together, though, did you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't think so.
You should have. You could have been the same.
No, he wasn't living out here when I took Mr. Nichols' first time.
So, mowing. This one's the one I think is I actually think this is one of the hardest ones to understand, because the lines are kind of difficult to work out to me, and have been. Especially there's this one part where I just go, what? I don't know if y'all felt this way. Like, I feel like we get the wholeness of it. It's the little particulars that I think are confusing. There was never a sound beside the wood but one, and that was my long scythe whispering to the ground. What was it whispered? I knew not well myself. Perhaps it was something about the heat of the sun, something perhaps about the lack of sound, and that was why it whispered and did not speak. It was no dream of the gift of idle hours, or easy gold at the hand of fay or elf. Anything more than the truth would have seemed too weak to the earnest love that laid the swale in rows, not without feeble-pointed spikes of flowers, pale orchises, and scared a bright green snake. The fact is, the sweetest dream that labor knows, my long scythe whispered and left the hay to make. What do you think it is? Like this, the overall, like I guess, meaning of this. I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you what I think. I see some people are like, let me read this for the first time. So it's like this is the old school mowing. This is like having the scythe, where you're swinging it, and that's the sound of mowing. Not like today, where although I feel like my dad has a similar scenario. Like my dad mows lawns here in town. That's what he does for a living. Nichols Lawn Care, creative name. You can understand why more people use cutters. Although my dad was never like, I want to have a corporation or anything. He was always just like, I just want to have enough lawns, like I feel happy. Enough money to feel happy. So here he says, like, what is it the scythe is whispering? What's that sound make? What's that sound mean? Trying to figure out the meaning of the whisper. And he says at the end, the fact is the sweetest dream that labor knows, the long scythe whispered and left the hay to make. It's like, if somebody were to ask him, why do you mow? And he's like, it's the mowing. Like, why do you like it? Like, it's the mowing itself. I just like the doing of the mowing. You like the journey, not necessarily the destination. The fact that you're doing hard work feels good. I always think, when I think of this, I think of, I don't know if any of y'all have y'all had a dad or a grandpa or something who always just worked out in the shop with his hands. I had one of those, or my wife's dad is like that, where he works and he does stuff, and he was like building his own shop, and he decided to put wood on the walls, and then he went, you know what, he went and bought a blowtorch, and he took every single board and like kind of went back and forth across it with his blowtorch flame, and put like a slight burning char look on every board before he nailed it up. Hey, it looks super cool. But I could never do that. Like, I don't give a crap about that. And like just the sweet love of hard labor, it's something I don't experience. But there are certain things that I do where I go, man, just doing this feels good. For me, it's, I don't know, walking around a college campus or spending time in a college library. Those are the things where it's like I don't even have to be doing anything, and just being there sometimes makes me feel amazing. And for him, though, in this case, this is trying to figure out what does that whisper mean, that sound, that all you're hearing, you're doing all this hard labor. It's like your body's aching, you're working hard, you're sweating, but the only sound that actually exists is shh, shh. And that sound itself is like, it's just like kind of a good like metaphor for like the simple love of hard work. Some people like that kind of stuff. I could care less. In fact, my dad was kind of shocked when I mowed with him for 7 years, 120 lawns a week in the summer. Lots and lots of mowing. I probably don't seem like the kind of person who would have ever done hard labor ever. Tons and tons. We weren't using ride mowers. I was in charge of the push mower. So I was like, I would do the one. And usually I had the one that, because my little brother, he needed a self-propelled. And so if one had the self-propelled went out, and I don't know if you ever use a self-propelled mower when the self-propelled goes out, it sucks. You're pushing like something twice as hard as you should, because it's got some drive that's in gear that it's like steering a car with no power steering. But I did that, so many, and after I was done, I was like, wow, it was like, he wanted to teach me the value of hard labor. My dad did, I think. And what I learned was, wow, after all that, I've really learned something. I don't ever want to do that again in my life, ever. Like it was a valuable lesson. It's like I would know, like if somebody said, hey, I've got this construction job, pays $150,000 a year, you swing a hammer, I'd be like, I don't know why it pays that much, but $150,000 a year, that's attractive. I would go, nope, I would not be happy. Not going to do it. Could be a millionaire in 6 years doing it, but I don't want to. So I actually paid a guy to mow my lawn. Offended my dad, I think, so he started mowing it for me. But I mean, he was already mowing the church in town in my brother's yard, so I guess I was like, okay, I feel bad, but I just don't want to mow my own yard. I don't feel any, like some people go, man, I feel real good about mowing my own yard. Like, not me. I don't. I just feel like I'm wasting time. Time that could be used learning or grading or hanging out with the family. It just feels like a huge waste of time to me. But I understand there are people like this and that they feel this way and they feel strongly about this. And I get it. I do. That's your love. My love's my love. When my eyes drift across a page of poetry, that's my this. I'll probably just move on in the interest of time. This is the one that's my favorite, though. Not my favorite, but maybe the one that I feel applies to just about everything in life, especially these days. I don't know, mending wall is my favorite, I think. Well, this one's so succinct, though. I don't know, was it? So, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells to shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. But I have promises to keep. And miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. Thoughts? He asked the class for thoughts. But none of them ever came.
It sounds almost like it's tempting to just stop and give up.
Oh, it's interesting you say give up. That's an interesting word. I find that interesting.
But he still pushes. He finds some form of drive. For him, it's promises. He can't break it.
I kind of feel the same way, but he knows he needs to get to the set place that he needs to get, but he feels like he needs to stop and rest. But he knows he needs to make the time before he stops and gets up to rest.
I wasn't laughing at you. I saw keys fly through the door. Yeah, so
See, I thought it was the obvious thing about taking a minute to enjoy, stop and smell the roses.
it kind of is that. And see, that's the thing is you say give up, and I feel like that's what the world wants us to think today. Because I feel like, I've had jury duty before, okay? Have you ever had jury duty? Any of y'all yet had to deal with that? Post 18? No. You ever had a day when your schedule changed unexpectedly and something you were going to have to do, you no longer have to do, and you've got like an hour or 3 to yourself?
Yes.
And that you can't accomplish the things you've got to accomplish, but you've got an hour or 3 to just kind of do whatever you want or feel to do for like a couple hours. Like when a class gets canceled or something. But you didn't expect it. Like not like a planned one where you could have said, oh, I'll do this or this other thing, but like just all of a sudden, boom, nothing. Those are like the best days. You ever find like so you end up having like a good day when that happens? When suddenly an obligation you had just goes away.
Yeah.
You like sometimes you'll just I'll just wander over to Starbucks and have a coffee, maybe just sit in my car for a few minutes, or maybe I'll just go like sit at the park or something, or I'll go over to Walmart and I was gonna look for some maybe movie to watch tomorrow night. And I just look around for movies or something. You just feel like you don't have to be anywhere for at least a few minutes. But most of life is having to be somewhere. You have miles to go before you sleep. Like there's never really a time when we don't have obligations, no matter what we're doing. It's constant obligations. Down to the minute sometimes per day, we've got everything planned. He stops and he sees, look, it's snowing. Look at the woods filling. In fact, that's probably the best example in Texas. Every time it snows, we close the whole state down. We're like, oh yes, snow. And like we just go, what the hell am I gonna do? Who cares? And if you're all caught up on your work too, you're like, Let's hang out. Like, but we just don't get any chances to do that. And it seems to be getting worse, guys. Like, I looked in, like, I actually read an article in the Atlantic last year, I think, that it was about workism, where people claim Christianity as their religion, but there's really a new religion that we don't talk about. It's called workism. Like, people, you try to find a job, and then like, what you do with that job is you work your ass off at it. You never stop. It's like you work at home, too. And I feel like I'm that way with the teaching. I feel like I'm doing something good with it, but it's like, sometimes I look at the other people who are just like, I want to clock in, clock out, and go home and not think about it. I'm like, what kind of person are you? It's like, why aren't you thinking about this passion of yours at home? It's like, I don't know. I feel like this is what we have to do all the time. And like, even the damn horse. The horse is like, dude, what are we doing? He's a horse. He's like, huh? You know that? It's like that. Yeah, we all know that horse, honestly. That horse is, shoot, like, it's just the processes of life are like, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Why are you watching the woods fill up with snow? And it's just nice to take a break, Just do something that you don't, and it's not do something you have to do for a minute, but do something you just struck your fancy to do. But we don't have time for that crap. Everything is work all the time. So it's like, I actually don't personally, I think Mr. White has talked about this before. I think he talked about it more jokingly. I don't personally think that income thing, that earned, what is it, taught that universal basic income, I don't think that would actually work that well. I think if you provided for specific things, instead of just giving, hey, here's everybody $1,000 of cash a month from the government, I feel like that's, like, I don't understand the point of that. Because it's like, don't people pay taxes? And then for the paying of the taxes, you're just going to give that money right back to them? I feel like it's silly. Like, I don't know, the concept to me is very strange. Like, if you're going to put it into services, I get that. But like here, pay us $1,000 in taxes. And what we're going to do with that? We're going to give you $1,000 a month. It's like, that's my money. Like, I don't understand. It's just like, here, give it to us, and we give it back to you. Like, okay. But I get kind of the concept behind it for some people. Is like, they just wish like they had some breathing money. Some money where they wouldn't have to just work their ass off all the time. They could just, okay, whew, now I know I've got this little bit of money for bills, so like I can like maybe drop the second job. Maybe I can read a book every once in a while. I don't know. It seems like we are less and less as society moves up. We have more economic disparity now than we've had in the last, I think, 50 years. Between the highest of the high and the lowest of the low, it's a big gap. 3 people in the United States, or 3 people in the world, own as much wealth as the bottom half, which is kind of scary. It might be the 3 richest people in the United States own as much as the bottom half of the United States, but that's a lot of damn money for one person to have. It's just kind of weird to have, like, did I talk to you about the 99 cookie thing on the plate I saw one day? I mentioned that, yeah. You can let that guy take your cookie? Except imagine the plate actually has 99,999 cookies that guy has taken, and there's still one left. That's actually closer to the economic reality. And I think it actually might be 999,000. Because somebody with $1 billion, if somebody's a billionaire, and I think that Mark Zuckerberg is like a 20 billionaire. I think I literally read somewhere that if I started earning $100,000 a year, like in the 1600s, I would not earn as much as Mark Zuckerberg has right now. Like he almost earns like my entire salary like once a minute, or like once an hour, huh?
69.9
billion.
Yeah.
It's insane. You can understand why he doesn't want to take political ads off Facebook. He was like, "I'm gonna pay money. I'm like, I want more." And nobody's ever satisfied with enough money. Isn't that weird? It's so strange. Like, I'd always have more.
Well, because your wants are never limited.
Your what?
Our wants, they're not limited. I mean, we just keep wanting more. That's why we're never satisfied.
I've noticed that since I'm now at a point in life where I have a comfortable salary, and that's, I think, what everybody's trying to eventually get to, right? Not like $1 billion. You just want to.
Right.
You just want to breathe.
Yeah.
Now I've noticed that the most important commodity for me is time.
Right.
Every decision I'm like, if I go, we're gonna rent a movie. Actually, I don't run to the Red Box anymore, even though it's cheaper, because the running to the Red Box means I got to get in the car, drive to the Red Box, drive back home, put the disc in, hope the discs work. If it doesn't, I got to go back to the Red Box. I got to call them and say, hey, this disc doesn't work. It's scratched. We'll give you another coupon code, Sarah. Okay, well, thank you. Whereas if my home, I do the voodoo, and it's like a lot more money. It's like instead of like $2, I'm paying $6 for a movie.
Well, I
But
don't
that
know.
$4 saves me time that I can spend with my family and sit around, and anything that buys me more time to live my life, that's what I'm spending money on now.
I don't even watch movies because I don't have time to sit there for an hour and a half.
And the last time I watched a movie was Joker, and the last time before that was
Yeah, I mean.
my
I
wife's
can't tell you
birthday.
The last movie I watched.
And it's you have young kids too, right?
I do, yeah. I've got
Young
two
kids, just once you get them, you're done. Like you're done with a life for
Yeah,
a while.
For a while, right.
You can't do anything you want to do unless you're in a situation that involves custody, in which case kid goes to one parent for like a weekend every once in a while. But I'd much rather not deal with custody. Custody sucks. But we need more time. We need more time. We need to breathe.
Seriously, yeah. It's like, yeah.
And you don't feel. I mean, it's really weird. Everybody goes, "Oh man, I hated high school. I want to become an adult." And then you become an adult, and you're like, you go from having all the time in the world and no resources to do anything that you want, to having all the resources to do anything you want and no time. You're never in a situation you have both time and resources. And the people who do have both time and resources spend all that time trying to get more resources. And that's what the billionaires do. They're like, I gotta spend all my time trying to get more billions. Yeah, and nobody's retiring either because they're just working themselves until they die. It's like, how do we do anything? Boomers.
I saw my grandma. She's kind of a busybody. And if you tell her, hey, you need to retire, and given that she's like 75, she actually got rather offended with my dad because she's in her 70s. He said rather politely and said, hey, it's getting to that point where you need to retire because your body is really deteriorating on you. And she did not like that one bit.
Well, see, that's the problem too of workism. We've essentially told people what makes you matter is work. And so old people don't want to stop working because they feel like that's the only way they matter. And back in the 60s, it wasn't that way. People could stop working and be like, finally retirement. Finally some time to breathe and spend time with my husband, my wife, and live the way life is supposed to be. But today they're told that work is the only thing that matters. And so the young kids can't go to work because the old people won't stop working.
I work at Brewster's Equipment. We've got 2 or 3 courtesy clerks that are like 65, 70.
It's weird. Like, I mean,
They got bored and got a job.
well, no, part of it too is some people will retire. Like there are teachers I've heard this from. Like they retire, but there's not enough money to live off of, so they get a second job where they work part time a little bit during the week. So that's now kind of like their old salary. But we shouldn't have to do that. Why aren't we taking care of old people? I don't know. It's just like if I'm old, I wish I could just. If I wanted to work, I could work. If I didn't want to work, I didn't have to work. But I wouldn't feel the need to absolutely work. I don't know.
My grandmother retired from Walt Aircraft. She drives school buses for free.
But that's got to feel rewarding too. And that's a field too where they can't find anybody to do it. School bus work it's hard for them to find workers. I actually value that kind of work. I think it's a great thing to do in retirement.
Yes, she tried to convince me to drive buses too.
She did. Well, that's because they always need people. No,
Yeah,
they need people who are willing to work for not much money between the hours of 6 and 8 in the morning and like 4 and like 6 in the afternoon. Like it's the weirdest hours.
You get a big break in between.
Yeah, great break in between. And if you're going to wake up early anyway, why not? And then you do a little bit in the afternoon, then you eat. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. But
Yeah, not only that, but the kids, they can be hellish.
yeah, if
I
you're
rode
nice.
the bus pretty much from middle school to high school, and there was one kid that I had while I was in high school. He sprayed Axe on the bus. I was like, seriously, why?
Now that's going to be
Why
one of the
on
first
bus?
things that when they start doing automation, that's going to be one of the first things they do is have. Well, but the thing is, you're still going to have somebody on the bus that can keep the peace. So
My
yeah, it's
grandmother
gonna.
is the bus driver. She would put you off the bus. She would write you up. She does not care.
That's what you need. That's what you need.
I could walk from this street to the school, get help.
Let's do mending wall. So that's one of the things I love about Frost is he talks about things in nature that have universal application. It's one of he's great for writing papers, the research papers, because you could take what he's saying about trees and apply it to politics or like business or anything. Mending wall is one of those as well. Now I should mention here when he talks about in some areas of the country it's cold all winter long and actually freezing. So the ground freezes and it swells the ground up because ice is bigger than water. It expands. And so it actually causes this stone wall they've built to fall apart. So that's why it's like, well, what's it talking about frozen ground swell? That's just because the ground actually freezes all winter and knocks the fence over, the kind of stone wall they've got built. In addition, I guess hunters, they're hunting with their dogs and like a little rabbit gets in there and they got to take all the stones apart so they can get to the rabbit. So that's the two things at the beginning he's saying that kind of sound confusing. So he says, something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen ground swell under it, and spills the upper boulders in the sun, and makes gaps even two can pass abreast, side by side. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go. To each the boulders that have fallen to each. Some are loaves, and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes a little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He's all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly. I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only, in the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying. He likes having thought of it so well, he says again, good fences make good neighbors. Oh. Yes?
I actually read this one a while back before we were doing this. I was hoping to do a big topic. I heard it was related with a big topic of why we created borders between nations when we all share the same earth. We all share the same area. The land is just our land. It's the same place. It's not one or the other. It's always been just this one piece of land. It's always been here for hundreds of years, and now we're here. And what he says at the end about his father saying is that all we're doing is keeping the ideals of the past for a time where it makes no sense, where we've gone beyond those old ways, we've gone beyond all of that, to now we're just repeating a reason in our head with no true purpose.
I got nothing on the other poems, and then boom, that's it. Riley's like, I think, yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. Moving on. No, interestingly, you say that, it's like, because usually when I talk about, one thing it's easy to talk about for this paper is you could do mending wall and Trump's wall. Super duper easy. Because in this poem, now it's the thing is, if you're going to do that topic, there's only one way to do it. And that's to be anti-wall. Because the poem is very anti-wall. Not that I'm saying you need to be an anti-wall person. I'm saying if you're going to do it over this particular poem, this poem is very anti-wall. And what he's essentially saying, it says, the part here I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly that want this wall down. Because you notice that the wall keeps falling down year after year. They keep having to put it back up. something's knocking this wall down. He's like, I could say elves. And I think that's one thing that Frost does. He did the other one too. Easy goes at the hand of Fey or elf. He wants to leave it as something like elves that's kind of universal. We know that's a magical, fantastical entity that has magical powers and abilities that are beyond us. But that's his way of saying, whatever God you think is God, that's the thing that keeps knocking this wall down every year. So he's saying, God doesn't like this wall, but you keep rebuilding it. Why? And it's essentially what you're saying. Like it's always been that there are no borders, yet we created borders where there were none, and we now enforce those borders. It's like people come across from Europe, and they are now in America, and somebody says, this is mine. And Native Americans are like, we're already kind of here, though. I was like, this is ours now. It's just the weirdest. And then we put up a wall, and we wall off what's ours, and we buy some from the French, and they sell it to us, and the Spanish, and it's just so weird. And the weird thing, too, is I saw this TED Talk one time. It was a guy talking about we're having increasing desertification, meaning that the world is increasingly becoming desert. Like we're losing fertility in the land, and it's like becoming dry, and like the grasses are dying off, and like it can't hold water and stuff. Like you'll have massive rains, and the water just goes away. It all evaporates the very next day. You essentially need ground-covered plants to hold water so that we continue to have grasslands and things. But they found that the only way to actually achieve that is to have controlled grazing of animals, where like animals, essentially like the old days, what would happen is, we'd have like a herd of cows or, some animal that are just wandering the countryside. And weirdly enough, the wolves that would chase them would mean that these animals were constantly on the move and constantly herded very close together. But what they would do is they would eat the grass that was there. They'd poop on it as they went, and they'd stomp on the poop.
I actually did that same thing a long time back.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what would happen, too, is like being in fear of these things that would come and kill them, too, they would constantly, like, essentially, like, have you ever heard of somebody aerating their lawn or something, like, or fertilizing? It's kind of like they're mashing and fertilizing and pushing all the grass cover down so that when it does rain, the rain soaks through that grass, but then the ground is able to hold it, and it's able to make that whole process of what can now create grass. But because we've fenced everything off and walled everything off, the animals can't do that anymore. And so the grass is going to continually over time die, and will slowly turn into desert-like land because we're creating this scenario in which animals can't do what they've always done to make sure the grass keeps growing. And so weirdly, there's national parks where there's been desertification, mainly because they've taken the animals off the land to preserve the land. Isn't that crazy? So it's like the building of walls has essentially started killing the earth. It's our fault because we're changing it. Like we should just honestly take all of our fences down and let animals graze. And it sounds like we're talking about some bohemian paradise thing, and a really hippie commune kind of. It doesn't sound like everybody's going to own themselves to death. Like everybody's going to keep owning stuff, and that's is mine, and that's yours, and then there's going to be nothing left, and be like, well, damn it. Based on this guy's TED Talk that I saw about it, the guy killed off 30,000 or 40,000 elephants because they thought that was what was killing the land. And it got worse. And he was an elephant lover. He studied elephants. But they figured out it was the only thing that could be doing it left. But it took this complicated realization that we needed animals to graze the land, not burn grasses because they're choking the land, but to literally have animals walk across it and poop on it because that's what it needs. And there was really impressive stuff. If you look TED Talk desertification, you can see like he's got a whole bunch of images of like how they took deserted land, let animals walk over this land with no grass, and then it grew grass the next season. So crazy. But yeah, I mean the poem is essentially like he's asking like, if God doesn't want walls, why do you? And he's like, well, my dad said good fences make good neighbors. So if we just constantly go on believing the lessons of our fathers without evaluating them and what they mean, that's problematic. Additionally, like it seems as though nature keeps tearing down our walls, we keep finding ways to put them back up. It's an interesting poem, I think. And then we have, where are we at now? Got 2 left. We got 7 minutes. Yeah, we'll do it. We might only get to this one, but I have Birch's that's the harder one to get to. We'll see. He says, My long two-pointed ladder sticking through a tree toward heaven still. And there's a barrel that I didn't fill beside it, and there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough. But I am done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night, the scent of apples. I'm drowsing off. I cannot rub the strangeness from my sight I got from looking through a pane of glass I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough and held against the world of hoary grass. It melted, and I let it fall and break, but I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell. And I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. Magnified apples appear and disappear, stem in and blossom in, and every fleck of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. I feel the ladder sway as the boughs bend, and I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hands, lift down, not let fall. For all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap as of no worth. One can see what will trouble the sleep of mine, whatever sleep it is. Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe it's coming on, or just some human sleep. This one I think is it's super hard. I've always thought it works best if you imagine it as a poet. But really anybody who's had a bunch of ideas, taken care of those ideas, but then gotten just super tired of having to deal with it. So you could maybe say this is like a teacher too, or like an advisor, a counselor, or somebody who like works with people. I almost feel like Frost writes parables like Jesus does. It almost feels like that. I feel like this is a parable. And it reminds me a lot of like the sifting wheat. Isn't that the one? Like there was one where like it said the kingdom of heaven is like, sifting, like sorting wheat or something like that. So like the crops grow and somebody says, oh, there's weeds. And he says, well, let it all grow together. And at the end when it's all grown, we'll pick it. We'll separate the weeds from the crop, and we'll keep the crop and burn the weeds. And it almost feels kind of like that, where he's talking about how there's going to be some that I like how he says not gently lower, but he says lift down. Like you're holding it and like you're still using the muscles that would be used to lift something, but you're lifting it downward sort of. It's like you're using the lifting muscles to go down with it. So gingerly letting it come down. Because if you drop it, it goes to the cider apple heap. Because they take, I guess, the bad apples and they make cider out of them. That, bitter, alcoholic drink. So, that's biting and it's inhibited. But he's saying, like, I want to, like, really take care of these good apples. And I almost feel like that's when a poet has, like, an idea. And he's like, I've got a great idea for a poem. I need to gingerly take care of this. Work with it real hard, and then like gently like take care of it and let it become the apple it needs to become, and like get to somebody's table and they eat it and it's gonna be great. Because the ones I don't do a good job of, those are gonna go to the cider apple heap. It'll be like something I have in a notepad somewhere that just gets shoved aside, or nobody thinks that was any good. But he says too, like my instep keeps the pressure of a ladder round. He says when I dream of these damn apples coming at me all the time. Is it because it's constantly what he does? So it's like this nightmare he constantly has about like, what if I don't do it? What if I didn't get it done? What if I let too many go? And it's sort of like that as a teacher too. And like a student will drop off, and you're like, man, what happened to that guy? And then you can understand too why some people just there's so much pressure all the time, and like he's just like, I permanently will feel the instep arch of a ladder round. Like I'll always feel like I'm this rider, but he's like, I need a break. And he says, I don't know if I'm gonna be sleeping and then waking back up later, or if I'm gonna be like hibernating like a woodchuck. He's like, I may end up not writing poetry for like a night or two or a week and be like, okay, now I'm ready to write again. Or I might stop writing and be like, I think I'm done with this. And then you end up hibernating more or less forever. That's kind of just what I've always seen here. Is like it's one of those places, those things where you realize you have to nourish an idea, really take care of it. Anything you don't handle correctly will end up being thrown by the wayside and maybe still useful, but not in a good way. Because it won't be used for like apple pies or things like that, delicious stuff. It'll be thrown into some bitter alcoholic drink that keeps you warm in the wintertime. And he's like, he literally like feels almost traumatized constantly by the fact that he's worked so hard to make the good ones work, and works so hard and like feels bad about all the ones he's let go. So he's just kind of taking a break from it. I've always felt like that. There's a lot of things that could be metaphors for that, but yeah. And then because we just don't have any time, I'll just move on to the next one. Birches. This is a little longer, but essentially I think it's like if I don't have a time to mention this, it's kind of like oh, somebody damn messed with my clock again. Let me basically just tell you because I don't have time to read it because we're at 10:44 and we have 1 single minute. So here's what I see. He talks about the boy. He says, I see birches bent down, because apparently birch trees have soft wood and they can bend. And if there's like a real heavy winter storm, remember that time we had like an ice storm that like trees were falling over? And like roads were closed for days and people had no power for like a week. It's kind of like when those ice storms hit up north, the birch trees can't maintain the weight of the ice and they just bend over time. And he says, I'd rather like to think of this birch forest as having had one boy coming. Apparently you can like go to the top of a birch tree and your weight will actually start to bend and you can swing down on it and then like hold on and then jump off, and like it's so bendy that like you'll actually get to kind of do like a double jump. Has anybody ever seen that, like the video online where like it's like kids on a seesaw and one kid's standing on the seesaw and another kid like jumps on it from like a height, and when he jumps on the seesaw the other kid jumps off his end and does like this doubly high backflip. It was super cool. And like it's almost like that. It's like when you do the swinging of the birches and you jump, you get to fly higher. So I really think that he's like wishing not to imagine that this is what usually happens. It's like ice storms come and they take our life from us essentially. Like we're constantly dealing with crushing debt and tough things in life, and we more or less live life lived us. But he would have liked to imagine instead that we're enjoying life. We're living life instead of having life come bearing down on us like an ice storm. And I've always thought that that's essentially what this poem is trying to say. Is it'd be great if we could live our own lives and enjoy it instead of having life bear down on us crushingly. And that's why we should be worn out by having fun, not worn out by working. Yeah. Frost seemed to have a lot to say about working too damn hard. There's too much to do. So that's it. Y'all have a good one.